Welcome to Hot Topics on the Edge of Show. I'm Josh Trieger here with my co-host January Jones. This episode is brought to you by Realm. Realm crafts insurance solutions that give businesses in dynamic industries like Web3, AI, alternative medicine, biotech, and the space economy the protection to innovate and thrive. Where emerging industries have previously battled uncertainty, Realm is making innovation resilient. And just a quick note, the views expressed by the Edge of Company and its host do not necessarily reflect those of Realm.
Coming up today, ETH is 10 years old, the White House bombshell crypto report, July's NFT revival, and we're doing a conference on Capitol Hill in October called The Future of Money, Law, and Governance.
This is another production of the Edge of Company, a rapidly growing media ecosystem empowering the pioneers of Web3 technology, culture, and innovation. Let's get started.
Okay, well, Ethereum is having a birthday. It's been 10 years now, and it's quietly running the show in the background. Recent stats say it's processing 55 to 65% of all global crypto transactions are on Ethereum. Wall Street's been pouring into spot ETH ETFs, like ones from BlackRock, have snapped up over $11 billion of ETH in just months. And corporations are staking their claim too. We've been hearing about people building their ETH treasuries now, and they're adding up to holding 1% of all ETH as we record this. And there's plans to buy more. So gas fees have come down, which was a major complaint. Activity is surging, and they're saying the market cap is coming back towards $500 billion. So while Bitcoin has grabbed the headlines, ETH is really setting the pace where it really counts. Josh, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen the evolution of ETH getting recognized and how it's been used more and more for DeFi applications and beyond?
Yeah, well, before I get to answering your question, I just want to give a shout out to the crypto community in Lisbon, where I'm based right now. I got a chance to celebrate ETH's 10-year anniversary yesterday and reflected with some of the folks in the audience about where it's all going and, the freedom and the scalability that it's brought to overall building across the whole blockchain ecosystem. And for me, Ethereum has just continued to evolve. It's had some setbacks, the DAO hack, gas fee problems, the merge wasn't quite as technically successful as everyone had hoped. But it did align Ethereum with global sustainability rules, and it turned ETH deflationary. I also think it's worth looking at the progress with layer 2 rollups like Arbitrum and Optimism and the usability that they're bringing Ethereum at scale, not to mention, of course, what Polygon has done and whatnot. So fundamentally, I think there's a lot of untapped potential here in Ethereum. This sort of accusations that ETH was sort of dead or not worth holding, I think were definitely premature. Cries of frustration that folks would like to see the progress occur and impact the token side of things faster. But undoubtedly, Ethereum is still here and a formidable player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really hope that we'll also be like getting into this as we're talking about more policy in DC and the upcoming summit we have there. How is Ethereum part of kind of the backbone of government transactions, right? I think there's a lot of potential there. And I think we're hearing more and more about very tangible real world applications that maybe your average person can understand that are being deployed now, whereas in the past it was very kind of abstracted. So it's really an exciting time. And I think being 10 years old, ETH is finally getting its day, especially recently in the headlines, right? As Bitcoin is just so kind of sensational that it constantly steals the spotlight a bit.
Absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, there's so many different analogies you could use for Ethereum. It's sort of like economic Legos. It's connecting DeFi protocols. It's what sort of was the impetus of NFTs becoming cultural assets overnight. Major institutions like BlackRock, like you mentioned, are building tokenized funds directly on Ethereum. There's a lot of interesting things still happening there. ETH Denver and other sort of Ethereum events globally. ETC we're just at are were some of the biggest and boldest events of the year, with some of the most interesting sort of innovation ideas brought to the table. So I think a lot more to come here. And thanks to Being Crypto for the news that we're able to share today.
Yes, well, we didn't bury the lead, but I knew if we did this story first, I couldn't shut up about it. So now we're going to talk about the White House crypto report dropping. So I'm calling it a bombshell crypto report. They just released it on July 30th from this White House task force working group, and it may be the most aggressive crypto policy framework ever proposed by a major economy. And as you read it, it really fundamentally restructures how America approaches money, banking, and financial sovereignty. I mean, the implications are staggering and pretty controversial for traditional ways we've gone about doing business in the United States. So what exactly are we talking about? I'll name a few, and then Josh, maybe you can share another one so we can kind of lay out what's going on, and then we'll dig in. So a couple of the things that I saw that really grabbed me. The report mandates that banks serve crypto companies and champions integrating experimental DeFi protocols into mainstream banking. So this is essentially forcing private institutions into arrangements they might refuse otherwise based on the risk. So no democracy has ever mandated banks serve specific industries against their own risk assessments. So that's huge. It also demands that the SEC and the CFTC immediately enable trading of digital assets at the federal level without waiting for congressional authorization. So that's also a big one as we see how fast everything is moving, right?
Yeah, I mean, if that's not all, they're also advocating for a permanent ban on U.S. central bank digital currency research, making America the first major economy to constitutionally prohibit its own central bank from even exploring digital payment. As expected, continued support for a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but no details, which is getting criticism immediately. Another huge one is the report recommends Congress affirm the right to self-custody digital assets as a fundamental liberty. So I'm wondering, how do you do that? Is that a constitutional protection for real? Is that something that could even be in legislative packages? That's just some of the 166-page report. And, I we'll see what happens here. I mean, I love sort of pro-crypto policy as much as the next person in our industry. I just wonder if the pendulum is swinging too much to the other side with some of these ideas. And I think there's some concerns generally for our industry in terms of if we get too aggressive crypto too quickly and things don't work out exactly how everyone hoped, the pendulum can swing right back the other way and knock us on our back, right? So I think that's the sort of downside of this type of policy. Yeah, it sounds great on paper, but how is this sort of impact international diplomacy? How is this going to impact traditional businesses that certainly we want to sort of be excited about this change? And I think mandates get tricky. It's like, yeah, they may drink their medicine, but if they don't like it, are they really going to support the innovation economy we're hoping for? So these are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm a process person, and as a journalist, you're supposed to make sure the processes for laws are happening in the country, right? Journalists likes to say we're the fourth estate, and there should be checks and balances and differences between these branches of government, right? And so I look at it from a process because, look, if this is happening, this is a report, but it could turn into a bunch of executive orders, right? Then add to that, you're having, we just did the stablecoin bill. They're going to probably pass the Clarity Act, then mix in whatever the Fed and the SEC are going to come down with, right, in their own spheres. And so the pace of this, if it's all happening at once, we have no idea what kind of tornado that is. And while everyone's excited about the regulatory clarity, we don't know how all these policies are going to act out in the market because it's never been done before. So how fast do we really need to move on these things, and which things should happen in what order to ensure the credibility of the industry, and the stability as well. So cryptocurrency is here to stay and a viable option. So the speed and like this little witch's brew we have now of legislation, executive orders, and then mandates and rulemaking, it seems precarious, and I hope we continue to have those discussions very actively, even if we have to have them quickly, to really make sure this ends up being the best for everyone, because otherwise it's just going to go back to the courts and we're going to be, litigating by lawsuits.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on a lot of those points. And I would just add, the reality is Bitcoin is still a volatile asset. Yes, it has continued to appreciate, and it's scarce. And over the long period of time, I'm not financial advice, but I'm as much of a believer as the next person that's going to continue to escalate. My concern gets to sort of how such a volatile asset being held by such a major international power as the U.S. would sort of be impacted by the volatility, right? If, for example, all the $23 billion in seized assets are part of this reserve, and this is sort of directly integrated into the economy in such a demonstrative way, what's the downside protection on the volatility side? What's the hedge? So I'd love to continue to see pro Bitcoin and pro blockchain policy in the US. That's why we're doing an event that we'll talk about more in a moment. At the same time, I'm always been moderate around how and what policies get implemented, and making sure that they are vetted. So it'll be interesting to see. And I do wonder, January, was this sort of meant to sort of swing the pendulum to the middle by being a little bit more extremist, that they weren't actually expecting all of this to
Yeah.
actually occur? So anyways, fun conversation. What's next?
Well, we're going to briefly touch on this NFT comeback we've been seeing. NFTs are back this month in July. According to DApp Radar, the NFT market cap jumped to 6.6 billion in July, a massive 94% increase from the previous month. Weekly trading volumes are up, and it seems like CryptoPunks have been the one leading the charge again. One sold for over $5 million, and floor prices are climbing. So, Josh, of course, this show goes so deep with NFTs. What do you think? Is this the long-term trend coming around again, where things are going to level out? NFTs really kind of showing their true value and not being overhyped?
I don't know if what we're seeing is too different from what was anticipated during the heights of a bull market, right? There are some blue chips that are doing well, and it's nice to see that. However, I think in a better economy where I think the S&P just hit an all-time high again recently, people spend money on digital assets, and they buy art, physical art, they buy property, they buy things that they hope will diversify their portfolios and go up in value. So I guess for me, it's not much of a surprise to see these blue chips appreciate. I wouldn't want to sort of be the one to say this is the moment. I'm not sure if I call it that way. I think that I think I've always felt like NFTs are building blocks of innovation, and also stand on their own as really interesting cultural assets. However, we've seen that they can be easily speculated and over speculated in many cases. So I would anticipate further support for blue chip projects, and a higher bar now than ever before for projects to rise to that status. I think people will speculate on new NFTs again, just as they did in the previous bull market. When things get frothy, people have a little bit more fun. They get a little bit more wild, right? So that's going to happen too. But my real hope for NFTs is the mainstream use cases for them that are still sort of really interesting, where people have a membership, a loyalty, and identity associated with them. And it's part of a hybrid economy that includes maybe traditional tokens as well as sort of, an e-commerce experience that's really special, or other types of experiences and loyalty programs. I think the brands got a little bit skittish for good reasons. They dipped their toe in the water. It wasn't as easy as they thought to implement these ideas, so they stepped back. It's sort of like Groundhog's Day. The groundhog saw his shadow, a little bit more winter. I think spring is coming, but I think we need to look at more data before we could determine how long spring will last.
Well, what we need is the government to decide what asset class it is, right? That's what's been holding everything back. And so actually, I haven't really looked into that about if anything's in there in this
I mean,
upcoming legislation that would determine that. But that's what is in the gray area. You know what I mean?
I think there's a good chance that NFTs won't be considered securities. Don't hold me to it, but I don't know if that's a challenge as much as the fact that it's a little bit more of a niche technology. It's not so the be all end all for everything. Like at one point, NFT zealots were hoping, and I got very excited about it too. We had a lot of shows with a lot of great use cases for NFTs that haven't panned out. I think it's a normal human reaction to get excited by new technology, but now it's about modulating that excitement into the most promising use cases.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, as I sort of alluded to earlier, one big story that we're really personally excited about is that the Edge company is partnering with the Government Blockchain Association on a groundbreaking summit called The Future of Money Governance in the Law, happening October 30th in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Being on Capitol Hill like adds a whole other level to the relevancy of this event. And so, what inspired the partnership with the Government Blockchain Association?
Well, they have a long history of bringing together not only national government leaders, but state, local, international organizations that are committed to sort of using blockchain for government and enterprises. Government organizations have been looking at practical uses for blockchain very carefully over the last several years, and many governments have implemented blockchain solutions already. Why? Because it's a very practical approach to solving some of the innovation problems. We now know when you buy these big SAP systems, they always need updating, they're always out of date. There's a lot of labor involved in them, and some of these blockchain solutions are a lot more efficient for getting the job done transactionally across borders, right? So I think it's really fascinating to sort of have this opportunity to have this type of conversation and educate lawmakers, policymakers in the U.S. and globally, bring leaders from our industry together and cover interesting topics like tokenization, RWAs, national security, government use cases. So many really interesting topics that often don't get the full visibility at bigger conferences that they need. So this is a one-day VIP summit. You have to be approved to attend. We're really looking to bring thought leaders, pioneers, visionaries together to meet with leaders in government and have these types of conversations and an open dialogue. There's also going to be this really cool gala, 1930s theme called Cryptopoly. Yes, it's the Web3 monopoly. That is intentional. So it's shaping up to be a killer event. GBA is an amazing organization. We already have so many amazing speakers and partners that we have announced or will be announcing soon. You're not going to want to miss this pre-Halloween extravaganza.
That's awesome. I've previewed the list and the schedule, and I really like the schedule. It's streamlined, it's tight, Sessions are about 25 minutes, and we move through so many of the major topics with people who are real decision makers. So, what I'm looking forward to is kind of mixing all these people. It's not just a crypto reverb conference, right? We're really getting to the legislators and industry, enterprise businesses, right? We want everyone around the table because everyone is looking to Washington and all the things happening now and saying, what's going on? How do I do business now? Right. And so that's what this conference is really going to address in a very unique way.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some real firepower in terms of the lineup. We have Craig Salm, the Chief Legal Officer at Grayscale Investments, Representative Abraham Hamada from Arizona, Kyle Hampton, Chairman of the National Credit Union Administration, Yat Su from Animoca Brands, just confirmed actually. So that's some edgy news, as well as folks from Coinbase there, U.S. Congress members. You're definitely not going to want to miss this event. And we're really excited about shaping the future of money. So we will share the Loomer link where you can apply to attend. There's also a gala, which you're welcome to purchase a ticket. There are limited supplies, and we'll share the Loomer link for that as well. And you can use the code EDGEFRIEND to save 10% off our early bird tickets. So more details coming soon. This is definitely one to watch. And that wraps up today's episode of The Edge of Show. Join the conversation on socials and let us know, because the edge of crypto and AI is where the action is.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm January here with Josh. Stay curious, keep pushing boundaries, and don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss what's next on The Edge of Show.